Okay, hello everybody. We are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us for Demco's webinar, Getting More Books in More Hands. My name is Chad Martin and I will be moderating as well as presenting some alongside Kimberly. And just a few housekeeping items before we kick it off. First, please note that this webinar is being recorded. We'll hope to have that recording published to our webinars page within a few days. And at that time, everyone who registered for the webinar, whether or not they're actually in attendance, will get an email notification with a link to the page where you can view that. We'll also have on that same page some additional resources for you, including a Q&A for any questions that we're not able to get to today, although we do expect to have plenty of time, and then some other resources as well that we'll touch on later. I do encourage everybody to make liberal use of the questions and chat function because again, we'll have plenty of time to answer questions. So yeah, with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So first, let me introduce myself. Again, I'm Chad Martin. I am a product manager at Demco, where I have worked for the past 12 years. About 8 of those years were spent as a product manager in charge of library essentials. So everything from labels and label protectors to book covers, book repair, book trucks, shelf organization products, which now includes some of our newer innovative products like Shelf Spark. That's kind of how I've been spending a lot of my time in recent years is working with industry leaders, local librarians, discussing some of those tactics and solutions, and providing kind of consultations as well. So we'll be sharing some of those insights today. But first, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Kimberly to start us off.
Hi, I'm Kimberly Young. I'm the Library Strategy and Innovation Specialist here at Demco. Some of you may know me, though, as the Book Doctor. I came to Demco in this position just 1 year ago. Prior to that, I worked in the library field for about 25 years, where I was a children's librarian, a branch manager, a library director, a co-op director, worked on several special projects in the library world, including developing new staffing models, new programming models, renovating buildings, building new libraries, all different kinds of things. So today in our Getting More Books in More Hands webinar, we're going to talk about the importance of weeding, understanding community demographics, right-sizing your collection merchandising, wayfinding, and how-to Shelf Spark. So we'll start right off with the importance of weeding. Creating consistency in your practice of weeding will help you to make light work of this often daunting task. So developing a system that works for you and your staff and your library is very important. So am I going to weed at the same time every year? Am I going to divide my collection up into sections and weed throughout the year? Or am I going to assign sections to different staff members to weed? There's so many different options, but selecting, again, the one that's right for you and works for you and your team is what's most important. Then deciding how often you're going to review your items. So am I going to review really aggressively and look at items that are 2 years old in my collection? Am I going to just look at them moderately every 5 years and see how they're being utilized? Or am I going to wait it out and wait to see after items have been in my collection for 10 years? Either way, selecting what's right for you again is the best way to go. And sticking to these practices will allow you to keep a relevant and utilized popular lending collection, one that your community will turn to again and again. So one of the examples that I've always seen come up is the Guinness Book of World Records. We have no problem getting rid of a book on cancer that we see as outdated, but the Guinness Book of World Records, we will keep around for year after year after year. But when someone takes that home and they think they're going to learn they're going to grow the longest fingernails over the summer, and their Guinness Book of World Records is 10 years old, we're not really doing them the service that the rest of our collection is doing as well. So making sure that we're
Love
reading
that
and
example.
keeping our collection updated is really important. Now, demographics, or as I like to call it, getting to know the people in your neighborhood, will help you get more books in more hands. Whether it's a public, school, or special library, one of the ways we can do that is starting with the information that's available in our ILS. Most ILS systems have an underutilized reporting system. So here are some examples of reporting that may be available for you in your ILS. So you can look at your top 100 checkouts. You can do that in your fiction collection, in your nonfiction collection, children's collection, teen collection. You can do that by Dewey Century or by genre if you're moving that direction in your library. With these sorts of reports, they'll be able to help you understand what your community uses most. Then you'll be able to build a better understanding of how your community uses and engages with your collection. That will help you build a collection full of items that your community uses and engages with in a meaningful way. Then we right size our collection. This is about the space that your collection takes up. So your shelf space. Through the steps that we've already covered, you can build a usable and utilized collection. But the next step is to make sure that your space is organized and items are easy to find. So the 2/3 rule, ensuring that 2/3 of my shelf has books and another third has space to either display items or to move my books so that I'm able to pull books out easily and replace them easily. So if our shelves have space that allows our patrons to pull books out, or again, for us to display items, then we can keep our collection accessible and users coming back for more and more items. They're comfortable in that space, and the space allows for them to move around and to move the items in our collection around so that they can access them.
Okay, thanks, Kimberly, for that content. I'm checking to see, I really only see one question so far, and that was that the audio is going in and out. I'm not sure um, if that has improved at all. Does anyone have any questions over anything they've heard so far? Otherwise, we can keep it going and answer any questions at the end. Okay, looks like it is better. Okay, thank you, thank you.
Oh, good, I'm glad to hear that.
Yes. All right, I guess we'll go ahead and keep it rolling then. So, on to collection merchandising.
So I want to start this off, Chad, by saying, go ahead and judge that book by its cover. I do all the time. The cover art has come such a long way. We have beautiful book covers now. And these attractive images are what draw our eyes to these items. I mean, just walking through the library and seeing this beautiful picture or that beautiful picture, or when I meander through that cookbook section and see something that looks beautifully delicious on the front cover. These are what entice us, and they invite us to pick up those items. They invite us to want to take them home, to delve into them. Those beautiful images that we now have on the fronts of our even fiction and nonfiction books are what get us really engaged in those materials right off the bat. So those cover images are what get more books in more hands. So let's see them.
Yes, I could not agree more. You and I have talked about this before, and I know it's something that you
Over
and
and
I
over, Chad.
very much feel passionately about. And that really is, I've seen this, and I'm sure a lot of our attendees have seen it before as well, especially with our youngest readers. And when I've done library visits or consultations, and I've seen that so many times where a young kid will go up to a shelf full of just spine out picture books. And how are they supposed to pick a book from that? And I see that every time they'll slide them out one at a time so that they can see the cover art anyway. Slide it back in, slide out the next one. They want to choose it that way. They want to select their book that way. So let's just make it easy for them and turn them face out. And I do have examples on some of the following slides where we'll see some examples of that. But really do feel that that's something that we can encourage. And that is a way to just, if you're looking for an easy way to make a quick impact, that really is just about the most impactful way that you can improve the browsing experience for, regardless of age, for your users, is to turn some of the collection face out. To be clear, I am not advocating for turning every single book in your collection face out. I'm not saying spine out bad and face out good. I do feel that there's something to be said for a balance between the two, kind of making and breaking patterns. And depending on the situation, in a lot of cases, you can fit more books on the shelves by keeping them spine out in certain areas. So again, a balance is kind of what we recommend. But really, by doing some of that, getting them face out, and like Kimberly was talking about, is you're helping them browse, you're helping them explore, just really improving that browsing experience, which again is helpful for all ages. I especially do think of our littles and our youngest readers, and it's something that the independent browsing and selection of their books is something that we can do early on to help encourage that love of reading. And we know that when they're selecting their own books, they're more likely to continue reading. They get more understanding out of it. And certainly, again, they develop that love of reading. So again, these are all techniques that are very much to be encouraged, and things that are really pretty easy to do. There's a lot of solutions and products and ideas out there that you can incorporate to accomplish that. So a couple examples here. Pope Farm Elementary School is, we worked with Deb kind of providing a consultation where you can see the before and after picture on the bottom where there were a lot of those spine out books, and we introduced a couple different display products. So on that top left shelf in the after picture, that's one of our acrylic zigzags. And then there's a few of these series displays sprinkled throughout as well. And really, as soon as Deb saw the immediate impact of those, she started thinking about where in her library she could start achieving the same effect and where it would help out. And I know she has said so many times how much she loves the zigzag and the series display. Part of what she loves, they fly off the shelves, but they're also very easy to restock because she can just kind of grab the next series up and then watch those fly off the shelves.
Exactly. And I like how fast that is, Chad, when you can just, when you see that series is gone because you highlighted it, you can then grab that next one and put it out there so quickly.
Absolutely. That was a piece that I wasn't necessarily thinking of when we first started having the discussion, but she pointed out that benefit of it. She's like, it made my job easier. And there were other
Yeah.
examples of that too.
I've talked to librarians that said, I got this, I grabbed a series that maybe it was a few years old and maybe not real popular with this generation. But as soon as they saw it out there, they have been engaged in it the rest of the school year.
Sure. And then here's another example too of another local library that we kind of did a consultation, Yahara Elementary School. So this was Jamie, and again, you can see the before and after. So this is a section where I think it was My World that Jamie was really excited about trying to drive an increase in circulation within this this category. And so, she realized that she kind of had to weed, but she wanted to embrace this idea of face out. So you can see how we just took a handful of bins, got them on the shelves, and got them all face out. And obviously that made it really easy for her, I think it was first, second graders, to flip through and browse through and find what they're looking for. And she did see an immediate impact of that change. Within just a couple short months, circulation within this category tripled. So that's exactly what we love to see.
And I like how if we have some storage where we can put books, we can refill these bins. Often If we have extra books, they're often in another area of the library or in some type of storage. This can keep being refilled that way.
Absolutely. And I mean, if you're worried about, cutting back your collection or weeding your collection, that was part of what Jamie accepted she needed to do, was to cull through some of this. Excuse me. The biggest difference, if you notice, is that we did need to remove one of the 3 shelves in each of these units in order to allow for some vertical clearance above those front books. And that really is only going to be the case with picture books because they're so tall. These same bins
Right.
work very well for other formats like graphic novel, early reader. I'm sure others. Those are some of the common ones we see. But in those cases, you generally can just put one on each of these shelves, and you're going to not have that same pain point with shelf clearance. So that really is where a lot of the weeding had to happen. But if you're following that 2/3 rule, you're generally going to fit about the same number of books in one of these bins that you would if you had a spine shelf or a spine out on that same shelf. Here's one more example. So we have our customer council that we reached out and asked them what their favorite shelf merchandising solutions are. So this was Matt King's response was these bins. This is our Demco's deluxe acrylic browsing bin. It's not the same one that Jamie used. We have a couple different options, but the functionality at least is the same. You're effectively turning that standard shelf or flat shelf into face out browsing bin. You can see a picture of it in use there.
I know Matt commented to me how much he liked to be able to put those labels in of the different subjects.
Yes, the built-in slots there, and
Yeah, yeah.
Demco offers signs that go in those, but you can also use them for your own signage. That was something we felt very important in designing this, because we've seen countless times the kind of DIY MacGyvered signage in different libraries. You're a crafty bunch and you find different thrifty ways to do it. So that was an important feature we wanted to make sure to incorporate into our design. Okay, that brings us to wayfinding. So we've been talking about kind of the face out display to this point. Whenever I talk about shelf merchandising and Shelf Spark, I like to say it's kind of where those two worlds meet, where face out display meets effective signage. And the goal really of our signage is, the wayfinding side is helping guide our users through the space to find what they're looking for. And so Demco, we've kind of embraced this concept of ceiling to spine signage. So starting with like ceiling signs or large format signs, you can see this nonfiction one here. That's going to get them to the section or the space. And then we've got the end panel signage that kind of guides them through the stacks. The bookshelf sign that sits on top, that might denote that everything in this stack or maybe in this whole row is that category. To the bookshelf dividers that kind of help break up the stacks that way. That's been an especially popular solution that I think really especially has taken off, because again, it's dividing up the stacks that way. But a lot of the solutions that had been available prior were all kind of the DIY. These really the whole range of signage provides kind of that finished solution. And I think that's part of what's attractive about these. They're long-term, durable, but it provides a nice aesthetic look as well. And then all the way down to the spine label, that 1-inch spine label that goes on there. And you can see with this biographies example, incorporates the same design, and even without or throughout the different categories, the same aesthetic with the black background, the colorful graphics that pop. So kind of a few benefits that we see this bringing. Obviously, you've got the wayfinding piece of it. You've got the subjects. You've got that clearly marked to help guide your users. And I mentioned the longevity that it brings, that kind of finished look. And I'll especially hear that in public libraries when I ask, why do you like these, or why do you incorporate some of these display and signage solutions? The answer I'll often get from a public librarian is that they want to make that space, obviously they do care about the wayfinding, but they also like the aesthetics of it, how it kind of adds to their space, helps make it warm and welcoming, because they want their patron to return to the library. They want them to be proud of that space and feel welcome there. So that's a big part of it. Whereas the answer that I get when I ask it of school librarians, really the why behind the why is reading scores, and especially coming out of COVID with reading scores suffering and being kind of slow to rebound, I think that's a big part of the reason that this trend is taking off. The goal of getting more books in more hands, and again, encouraging that independent browsing is part of the benefit that we feel this solution combined with face out signage really brings.
I think that also we live in such a visual world these days with our phones and tablets and screens in front of us so often, that the consistency that I see in the biography sign, the biography shelf marker, and the biography spine label indicates to me that I am following that path to what I'm looking for.
Yes, absolutely. I totally agree. There we go. And then a couple other of our customer accounts. So you'll probably recognize one or maybe both of these names, the contoured librarian, the snarky librarian, both of which picked the exact same bookshelf divider set as their favorite solution for shelf merchandising. And, we offer a lot of different options for these, but, you don't have to take our word for it. Your peers really like these solutions as well. I'm not going to read these, but, these will be available in the slide, but very much testifying to the impact that it can make to a space. Okay, so we've talked about display, we've talked about signage. I want to share some kind of starter tips for someone who's looking to shelf spark and not necessarily sure where to start. So first and foremost, I always say to start small. You'll see if you spend any time on like social media or following influencer librarians, some of which are on our customer council, what an amazing job they've done within their library of incorporating some of these solutions and strategies. And their whole library just looks, it's shelf sparked. It's a lot of face out, a lot of awesome eye-catching signage. I feel that can be overwhelming. And so what I always encourage librarians starting to incorporate these is just to start small. Pick one shelving unit, or maybe a category if you feel you're up to it, or if you're not, maybe even just start with a couple shelves. But try incorporating some of these solutions, signage and display, and give it some time. Just see how it goes, and you'll have some learnings from that. And then closely tied to that, I think of this concept of a toolbox. These different signage options and displays, I think of as tools in your shelf merchandising toolbox, and they're all used for different things in different ways. And you'll see once you have some of those in your space on that small scale, see how they work and are effective for different things. And you might think, as Deb did, I shared that example earlier, wow, I love how the zigzag does this. And I feel like it would do the same thing. I want to get one of those in my nonfiction section. What I always say is that there's not a magic formula where you can tell me, Chad, I've got this many categories, this many books, and my shelves, I've got this many, and that I can just be able to tell you, oh, well, you're going to need this many bins, and you're going to need 12 zigzags, and it's not for me to dictate that for you. That's way too prescriptive without me knowing anything about your library. You, at the end of the day, are the expert on your space, on your users, on your goals and needs of your community. And so that, again, is kind of combining those first two bullets here. Start small, use a few of the different tools and strategies, and then see how it works. See how your users respond, see what kind of impact you see on circulation, what kind of feedback you hear, and then from there, you can scale it. Think about how you can effectively use some of those tools in other spaces throughout your library, throughout your space. And then last bullet on here is a starter guide. So I mentioned we would have some additional resources for you at the end of this. So that is one of the tools that we're looking to have posted when the recording goes live. It's just kind of a one-page starter guide where we'll kind of talk through some of the different solutions that are available in an easily digestible format. So make sure you look for that when you get the notification that the recording is live. Okay, and that brings us to our last slide. What we've got here, just real quick, just a couple links to some of the content that we've got on these topics, shelf merchandising. So Kelsey Bogan has done a couple webinars for us about dynamic shelving, and we got a few blogs, and there's more beyond this too. I would say if you are only to pick one thing from this list, the one that I would recommend is this last blog post, the ABCs of shelf sparking. And the reason I recommend that one, excuse me, is because there's kind of a lot of condensed content in a small, it's not going to take you long to read it, but there's some good nuggets. So it features, again, that library from earlier where I worked with Deb from Pope Farm. And together, as we kind of embarked to shelf spark her library, we had a lot of insights and learnings as we went about it. So some good tips and tricks to incorporate. So that's the one I would recommend if you have time for nothing else, but there is a lot of great content here. And then the last link here is, this is the Shelf Spark landing page on demco.com, which is where you can find all these different solutions. And I would recommend too, because we are always working to innovate and develop new solutions. We're always adding new options. So make sure to check back there for some of those.
And then I also added my email address here at the bottom, bookdoctor@demco.com. You're welcome to email us at any time with questions regarding Shelf Spark, regarding how you care for your books, repair your books. Any of those things are great to send to me. So Chad, do we have any questions?
Yes, I'm just pulling it up
What
here.
questions do you guys have for us?
Wow, this view is not the best, so I apologize if I miss anything. Okay, so I was blessed to have my district buy 24 of the inserts. I think that probably means the dividers. It's unbelievable how easily my pre-K and K kids find books. That's so great to hear. And I mean, we really have heard that same story over and over again. But that said, we never get sick of hearing it.
No, no.
It's
And that testimony just talks about how easy it is to use. She's talking about pre-K and kindergartners using this resource, how they can see that picture and say, oh, I like that. I want to get to those books. I mean, when we're approaching that age level and we're making the library easier for them to access, I mean, that says so much.
absolutely. And I mean, really, if I had to pick a target end user for that is like perfectly primed for the various shelf spark solutions and these strategies, it really is our youngest readers. But that said, one of the questions that I get most frequently, from customers, from our sales reps is, do you have shelf spark solutions for older ages and for adults? And my answer is always very yes,
Yes,
because just
yes.
about everything is applicable. Like the strategies, absolutely, very much so. I think there's maybe in terms of like the products that Demco offers, there's maybe one or two that are pretty much like pigeonholed for a smaller age, such as like the A to Z divider set, which has the graphics built in to help kind of signify A for apple, B for butterfly. Adults obviously don't need that. So, but with kind of we have a text only version of that as well. So obviously there's some exceptions, but like I also mentioned the browsing bins and really for the other face out displays, it's not just for picture books. That's where you really are going to have a ton of
No.
impact is with picture books for kids getting them face out. But what teen or adult isn't going to benefit from having those covered, that beautiful cover art face out? I
Right.
mean, I can't think of a scenario where it isn't helpful to have that.
I mean, I think of those seasonal displays, things where I want to pull all of my holiday books or books related to some other type of thing that we're celebrating throughout the year, or cookbooks. I mean, the front of cookbooks, it just goes without saying, they're so enticing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not seeing any other questions roll in. I know we got through this all pretty quickly. We've still got about a half hour left for our allotted time if anyone has any other questions. Otherwise, like I said, we'll have a Q&A posted at the end for anything that rolls in afterwards. We'll give it another minute or two and see if we get any other
Yeah.
questions or comments.
Well, that's one of the things about this topic, Chad, is it's just short and sweet. We know that it's approachable. We've heard that adding it in, as you mentioned, I really liked how you talked about adding it in one step at a time. And maybe starting with a couple things and seeing how your library users react to that, and then building from there.
I do think that that's hugely important. And I mean, libraries, maybe more, or librarians, maybe more than anybody I know, are just so overworked and so, there's just not enough time in the day. So
There's
that
so many things
is,
on their plate.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's just all the more reason to not bite off more than you can chew from the start. Um, I do think that that's just another reason that that's a good way to approach it. That can be helpful.
It's one of the reasons that these quick and easy solutions really help them build that attractive and engaging aspect in their collection as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One other I did see that we got another
Yeah.
comment or a question in here. One other thing I just want to say before I forget to is that in case you haven't picked up on it already, Kimberly and I could geek out about this stuff all day. So even if you
We
don't have a
could.
specific question, you just want to whatever bounce ideas or share feedback, whatever it is, feel free to message the book doctor at demco.com. We're happy to hear your thoughts, comments, questions.
Yes.
Okay, so this question that we got, I love that you offer real library examples and love the before and after photo. It's inspiring to see the potential a different shelving option can provide. That was from AB Drake. Thanks, Amy.
Oh, thanks, Amy. Um,
Which
yes,
librarian is that? Is that Snarky Librarian? I
yes,
can
that's
never
my
keep them
snarky
straight.
librarian. Um, so yes, and I know Amy is doing this too. Um, and that's one of the things about it is there's so many options that if this one looks great to you, try that one. Or if this one looks great to someone else, try that one. That's the greatest thing about it is that there's a right size. You can right size it for anyone, any collection,
And I
any
think
amount of
another,
engagement.
yes, and that actually kind of makes me think too, Kimberly, of another concept we've talked about, which is that, excuse me, if I talked about how, you'll see how the displays or the signage solutions are working especially well in one area of the library, and you'll make that connection that, wow, you know what? I could use some of those in my whatever early reader section. Um, but that's part of it is that these are very flexible solutions. These are not permanent fixtures. You can always move them around and try new things and see what's working, and you'll kind of learn best practices from that and what works best for your space.
Exactly. I think we talked earlier about how I could have the zigzag in my children's collection by my picture books to highlight maybe my Valentine's Day books. But then I can move it over to an area in my adult collection to highlight my gardening books as that season becomes more relevant.
Yes, absolutely. I am seeing another question. Thank you. Looking forward to the handouts. I've been using the series facing, so the acrylic series display. My first to fourth gravitate towards them. Thank you. Awesome. Thanks for
Oh,
that comment.
yay. Oh, I love hearing that. And once that age group, I mean, that's so wonderful because as soon as that first to fourth, once they get into a series, you can't get them out of it. And then they're just looking for the next one. So it'll just feed those readers one series after another.
I mean,
I love
absolutely.
hearing
And
that.
we kind of touched on the love of reading. Like, I know I talked about the end goal of like reading scores, but I mean, like, it's hard to really rank that compared to encouraging that lifelong love of reading. So that's where we really see it come out. All right. Well, I mean, we really could talk all day about this if guys want us to fill the space, because I really could talk about Shelf Spark, and I know you know Kimberly, you're very passionate about like the collection development, and of course the Shelf Spark as well. Um,
Yes.
but yeah, I think we'll go ahead and call it there. So thank you so much
Okay.
everybody for joining us. Again, remember watch for
I
the email
appreciate
about
it.
the when the recording comes out. Thanks so much, everyone.
Yes.
Thanks, Kimberly.
Don't forget to check out these resources. And My email address is right there. It's also super easy to remember. We can't wait to hear from you more.
Very much so. Thanks, everybody. Take care.